When you're going for really good businesses, when you're really connecting with executives, when you're having those type of conversations, you're going to need to have a case study, some kind of idea to show them that this is not an experiment. We've done this before. There's a problem. Here's a solution, proof of how we've done that, and the outcome. In this episode today, we're going to give you an outline for a business case study that Andrew's using, and it's really been helping his organization. I feel that it can potentially help you as well. Check it out. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. On this episode today, we have the one and only Andrew Kappel, and you can find Andrew on LinkedIn. His company is called Benchmark Signal Consulting, as well as his podcast, How the Deal Was Done. Is an amazing podcast. You can check it out. I was on that show, and we will link down to the episode. Today, we're going to talk about specifically business case studies and how you can use this, how Andrew's utilizing them, and how it's helping his business to grow. Check it out. You're going to love it. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Donald. It's great to be here. This is a bit of a home and home series where Donald was on How the Deal Was Done, which is my podcast, a couple of weeks ago, and then I was prospecting into Donald about a decade ago. So we keep in touch.
I literally was thinking about that this morning before we were recording. It was literally, I think it was 2016, wasn't it? We said,
yeah, we're almost a decade, which time flies, and it's cool. Like, you know, business is the long game. So.
Well, we love it, man. Well, you talked about your podcast a little bit there. We have a link down in the show notes. I bragged about you in a teaser about that. And tell us a little bit more, though, about what you do. Speaking about business, how do you make money?
Sure. Good question. And it's a challenge, you know, sales, got to do sales. And when you're a sales consultant, if your processes and if your stuff isn't dialed in, then you're going to have a hard time. And so, you know, I don't have everything figured out. What I will say is, you know, I think I've refined some of my processes and my background. I've been in sales for over a decade, and the last 3 years I was a delivery consultant, which means I was the sales team, the founder, the principals, the executives would sell a big project, and then it would be a handoff, and I was like the customer success team, but there was no product. I had to deliver the product, and I had to make it up, and I had to really get to know a customer's business, understand their pain points and their gaps and their challenges, and then craft these technology, people, process, and technology solutions to deliver effective change management. And so, you know, from that, I think I got pretty good at delivering successful client projects, but it's a whole nother beast to explain how you're going to do that and to build that trust when, again, you don't have a product. And so I'm a consultant, and that's what I've been building out the last year or so is my own consulting practice for sales strategy and sales acceleration services.
I love it. I'm looking forward to having you go deeper into that and to give us a little bit more of the nitty gritty there. And I feel like this will get a glimpse into your world and into what you do, especially with this conversation, because I'll share some of the challenges that I've seen and frame up when it comes towards this. As a sales professional, that disco, when you're having that conversation, oftentimes you can easily get into, and I literally had a conversation with my sales team about this morning, one of my sellers, but it's easy to get into this is a feature, this is the why we're good, and this is about our widget, and this is about how great our company is. But in actuality, what I found is that people are more interested in the business, especially when you're talking to the executive standpoint, right? They're looking for what can you solve, what problem are you sharing a solution to, and or what problems do you sharing that I may not necessarily know about. And the business case, I feel, does that because it shows that, one, you know the problem, but two, it also justifies it. So I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear, what problems were you having before you came up with this amazing solution, and we can go into that.
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, there's being a business owner and standing up a consulting practice, there's always challenges. There's unlimited areas of opportunity and things so I don't have it all figured out, but I will say, you know, some of the learnings I've picked up really through trial and error. And one of my favorite things about being a consultant is I've delivered about probably 36 consulting projects, and you develop a lot of pattern recognition, what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
across industries, across sales processes, across sales types. There can be a super complex deal. I spent about 5 years in enterprise data security where the deals took between 12 and 18 months. I thought that was a good thing until I realized that that's not a good thing because it takes a long time to get the deals done. It's hard to get paid. So, then I've worked with a lot in my consulting time. I've worked with a lot more transactional type businesses, but it all just comes down to who you have engaged, the champion, the coach, or the stakeholder, and partnering up with them. So there's a concept of instead of selling to Donald, I want to
Hmm.
sell with you. And how to do that is not by talking about your product or service. It's about understanding the pain points and priorities that they have, and then mapping your product or service, whatever outcome you're going to help, needs to focus on what Donald cares about, not the thing that I'm offering.
Okay, so ideally, I totally find this to be intriguing and on the same page with you here. Getting to that part though, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
And I would love to know, how did you go about making that happen?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you have to build trust and rapport and acumen with the person that you're working with. And it's really challenging, like in the days of cold outbound and prospecting. You can try a lot of different tactics to get the meeting, but if you
Mhm.
get the meeting and you don't bring it with acumen and having a point of view, then you're
Womp
not going to
womp
get that next meeting. And so you
womp.
need to be able to frame it and bring something that they don't know about or that they want to invest further with you. And so that's just about studying the business, how they make money, what they care about, what the personal and professional drivers are of that individual. And then hopefully you can identify a priority or a pain point that they're focused on, and you start to uncover some gaps and some issues that they're having, and then really anchoring to those issues.
Okay, you came up with a business case. Why
Yep.
business case?
Um, Well, I'm not very good at slide decks. So the one page business deck, I'm sure I'm probably not the only sales professional that's not great at slide decks. Donald just raised his hand. And so, it's a little bit of a cop out, but at the same time, sellers, we spend hours and weeks working on these slide decks, and we're so thoughtful, we're so detailed. And I think, Donald, this goes back to the presentation that, or the deal story on my podcast on how the deal was
Yeah.
done, where you had prepared the big procurement solution, the digital document automation. You went to the board meeting. I'm sure you would put a lot of slide decks together, and then it was just a bullet in the board meeting, and you realized that less is more. And so the one page business case is about consolidating everything and anchoring around the pain point or the
Yeah.
priority of the executive and your champion, and talking about their issues and what the outcomes that they're looking for. And your product or service is in there, but it's not what you're leading with.
So what are some of those things? If I do you use this in like the disco or in your initial meeting? Um, give me some context on that side,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then we
Really
can
good
go into
question.
what how that looks in the
Yep.
after that.
Yep. So I usually don't lead with the business case
Hmm.
in the initial discovery, but you want to get to know, hey, I'd love to understand, Donald, why did you take this meeting today? Hopefully they'll tell you. Whereas like if you just start the meeting with, hey, I'm going to put together a business case, they're like, on what? You kind of have to build that initial trust and understanding. If they don't have a need, or if you can't help them, then no business case is going to get there. So you really have to first validate that need and that gap. But typically at the end of a discovery call, I'm in consulting and there's something called the rule of threes. And so if
Mm.
you can identify three different drivers, pain points, or issues and anchor to those three, and then look at a pattern and say, how are these all going to be connected? And so you tie in, you draft up a one-page business case. I actually use a software called Fluent.io. Nate Nasrallah is the founder of that app. And they'll take the transcript from the call
It's
and give
dope.
you an 80% draft of the business case so that you don't have to write it all from scratch. But yeah, I really like to, circle back or review my notes, review the call recording, and review the transcript, put it into fluent.io, get that first draft, polish it up a little bit, and then say, hey, Donald, it was great meeting with you. I don't know if I have everything figured out, but here's a draft of a business case. I'd love to work with you and catch up again, see if we can improve this, get some of the key metrics to really give you a one-page document that you can take to your leadership team.
And well, and I think that's pretty awesome, because I feel like in so many cases, go back to my situation, and if you guys want to hear that story, you can go. We have a link down below into the show notes, so you can hear me on Andrew's podcast. But one of the things that we talked about was I went to that. There's a procurement director that I was working with. He was excited, we were excited, but then when he brought it up to the higher levels, they wanted, go back to this idea, a business case. They wanted a clear cut, what was the situation, what was the challenge, why we're doing this, the money that we're going to make from, how is it going to save money for us? It's because it's a school district, right? But it made it so much easier for him to sell it, so to speak, internally. And then he got the attention of the higher ups, and then it was that higher up came into the conversation now with me. If I reached out to the higher up and tried to get him, it would have been way tougher, because he's insulated so much. But because I was able to arm Rick was able to help me get access to Carter so much more effectively. But what should be in that, though? Like, case studies
it's a really good question, and it's challenging. So you can use some of the common frameworks. You can Google stuff. You can ask ChatGPT, which you can try it, but I think I've gotten more confused with ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is studying on Shakespeare and different wide variety of content and business material, not all sales related. And so as a consultant, the rule of threes, there's three main points to it: situation, complication, recommendation. And so this one-page business case, it might be a 3-bullet email where you're just listing out the situation. Here's the current state. We're on XYZ platform. We're growing the business. We're increasing headcount this year, and we're merging with another business. The complication is our current platform is not reliable. They're not supporting it. They're not innovating. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to have a real headache, and we're going to have trouble hitting our revenue growth KPIs. The recommendation, we need to look at evaluating a new widget, a modern CRM system. We're going to start with a crawl, walk, run approach. We're going to pilot it with this business unit. If that goes well, then we'll do a wider rollout, and we'll look to have full deployment by Q1 of 2025.
I like that. How can you give me an example of how you've used this framework coupled with a situation like you're talking about with your with one of your prospects, where you met with this person, so forth, you used this business case, and how was the result that it gave you?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few different examples. I actually have one with an existing consulting client that I'm working with right now. I don't always get to the CEO, but we had a briefing with the CEO, and we had identified this big pain point of
let's back up. How did you find them and all of that?
How did I find them? I'll be honest, it was a referral from one of my other consulting clients where fortunately we've been doing good work. We were introduced, and we did a tiny audit. The audit was probably $2,000, and we've billed since then almost 50 times that.
What?
So it was a land and expand approach.
I like that. Shoot. All right. So that's what you got the attention. Who was the person that you first connected with to get the audit?
It was the head of sales.
Okay. And they said, let's do an audit. And then after that, they brought the executive in.
Yep. And so, what I had actually positioned it as, hey, I don't know enough about your business really to put that business case together. Let's not waste our time and your time. Hire us to do a 10-hour rapid audit, and we'll present back some recommendations. So think of it the exact same way of situation, complication, recommendation. I think our audit readout was probably 5 pages because we had to put a little bit more meat on the bone since they were paying us for it. But the same concept of the 1-page business case exists.
And then from that, what did the executive say, and how did I mean, now that you afterwards, I would love to hear what happened with that executive, like when it came into that meeting. How
Yeah.
were their reaction to it? What did they say? Helped you helped you win the deal?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think we had probably listed out a half dozen areas of opportunity. And let's break it down again. It was across people, process, and technology. So we
Sure.
recognized some issues and some challenges that they were having. And we would have a here's the current state, here's the recommendation. So situation, complication, recommendation. And we just did that 6 times over, put it into an audit document. And then the way that we got the sale and the engagement was we said they're small, medium, and large. And just like anything, we framed it as like, small wouldn't be enough, large might be too much budget, but middle was just perfect. And that's what we've been working with them on ever since.
That's so dope. But some of the people here listening to this, they might say, "Well, it's you got lucky on that one." Is there any other examples of how you've used this framework when it comes to business cases? Maybe in one of your cold outreach
Yeah, yeah,
scenario.
yeah. Yeah. So I think that there's an outbound framework, and I'll just lay it out, and you can kind of poke holes in it, and we'll talk through it, so that way it's something actionable that it's like how you can use this framework in your cold outreach. So the framework is called SP3O. And Donald, if I can find it, I'll link it
SP30.
to you so that way we could
Yeah,
throw it in the
yeah.
show notes. But it's called situation, problem, third party offer, or like third
Yeah.
party validation, and then offer. And so it's kind of the same framework of the situation and the problem is like situation, complication, and then
Hmm.
the recommendation. If you're not doing business with them, if you haven't been able to build that trust yet, you reference a third party business, like a customer success story. Hey, we were able to help your peer get these results. And then the offer is, would you like to set up a time to learn more? Would you be interested in, checking out this webinar? So it's situation, problem, third party validation, and then offer.
Ah. And is there an example where you've used this? Any of your particular clients with the cold
Um,
outbound?
the way that I've used this, and so as with my consulting business, I like to land and then expand,
Yeah.
because if
I
I
really
pitched,
love that strategy.
yeah, yeah,
It's so
if I pitch too big,
yeah.
you get stuck in procurement. Things take a long time. They want to check all the references, and like it. Honestly, the answer is we'll revisit this next quarter, and then next quarter, next quarter. However, if you can really carve out a small little piece,
Hmm.
um, then you can move faster. And so what I've really found is like the communication is here's what we talked about, complication, here's the issue, recommendation, and let's do an audit. Pay us a 10-hour tiny consulting project. And that's how I start a lot of my engagements. I just need to be careful to frame it, because if I don't frame it well, then they think that that's all they're going to have to pay you, the small
Yeah,
little
like
piece.
that's only 2 grand. That's it. I'm good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
no,
So
bro,
so it's
that's just
important,
an appetizer.
it's important in the sales story and like your pitch that you explain contextually. I actually have a visual to say here's the audit and then here's the bigger program.
Yeah, I really like that, and I go back to this visual idea again. I've always just emphasized that, in from my approach, I've seen that 65% of human population are visual learners. So it's important that you give them that visual. Um, in the case of what we're looking at, because I really like this again, this idea of like the situation, the complication, the solution. Right, I got it right.
Yep.
There's that one page case study can really help anyone, no matter what industry that they're maybe in. And one of the things you and I talked about at the beginning was that we're not telling sellers like you need to go abandon everything else you're doing right now. This is something that's worked for you, and
Yep.
it's probably something that you can adopt with it. Have you tried it on multiple pages before, or why did you just conclude on the one page? I know we talked a little bit about it, that may be the
Yeah, yeah.
timing, but
It's a really good question. I think it's being empathetic for your buyer and your
got it.
champion. And that, yeah, like our widget can do all of these things. We could fill up a 10-page thing, and there's white papers, there's marketing materials that have all of that. But if you can't distill it down to the simplest format so that your coach or your champion can then go and present it to the leadership team, and they have, your coach or champion has so many things going on that it
Yeah,
wouldn't be fair to list out this, big document, have them memorize all these bullet points, when it's, hey, here's the 3 things. It's situation, complication, recommendation. And you can almost like role play with them to make sure they're comfortable.
I love it, man. Well, this is fantastic. You did some awesome insights here with this. If you were to wrap this up into maybe one major takeaway that folks can leave with when it comes towards this one-page case study, what's that one major insight?
Less is more.
Less is more. Use a case study. I love it, man. Let's say sales leaders or teams or folks listening want to get in connection with you, contact with you for what you're offering. How did they best do so?
Let's do an audit. Let's do
Let's do an audit.
You know my
that won't be the full
methodology.
price. That won't be the full price. It's just
yeah. The land and expand. But yeah, Andrew Kappel, Benchmark Signal Consulting. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and would love to have a conversation and see how we can help more folks sell more.
Love it. Andrew, thanks so much for taking the time to come on our show today.
Thanks, Donald. It's been fun.
That was Andrew Kappel. Please go ahead and check out his podcast with me on it, as well as connect with Andrew if you feel that he can help you with your organization. You can find more information about Benchmark in the show notes, as well as you can find information about how Andrew is doing with his amazing organization. I love the tactics that he shared. That outline is so simple. You're essentially sharing the challenge that they have right now. You're sharing the complication and then a solution towards that. And specifically using this in the top of the funnel part where it comes to prospecting, I think it's really, really just brilliant. So please go ahead and connect with Andrew. Tell him you heard him here on the Sales Evangelist podcast, and truly appreciate you. As always, I want you to thrive. I want you to succeed. I want you to raise the level of thinking. I want you to go out and do big things. See you in the next one.